passionate, driven, enthusiastic, euphoric. This is who we are as entrepreneurs. But how we leverage these incredible attributes to dream and build businesses that scale and grow is what this podcast is all about. Hello, I'm attorneypreneur Josh Brown, and welcome to Franchise Euphoria. Hello and welcome to another episode of Franchise Euphoria. I am thrilled to have Tim Francis on the show today. Tim is an entrepreneur from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. He's the owner of Tim Francis Marketing and the founder of Profit Factory. Tim is a sought-out consultant and speaker in entrepreneurship, marketing, and systems. Tim has been an entrepreneur for over 10 years now. His first business was in 2001 when he was a franchisee of College Pro Painters. In 2009, Tim was awarded one of Edmonton's coveted Sizzling 20 Under 30 awards as one of his city's brightest up-and-coming business leaders. Today, Tim is here to discuss something that is not talked about enough: systematizing all aspects of your business to help you run a smoother, more efficient, and ultimately more profitable business. Hello, Tim, and welcome.
Good day.
Good day to you, sir.
Thank you for having me on the show. I'm honored to have the ear of your listeners and to have this time with you.
Well, listen, I know your story a little bit, but I want to give you a chance to kind of tell your story a little bit from the perspective of, I know you were able to, obviously you've worked in franchising, you've been able to build up successful businesses, but I know along the way, you had to make a really 180-degree change in your life and in your business. And I think that's a powerful story to share and a great way to kick this interview off.
Yeah. So I would say that having systems and procedures well established in all areas of business is really the hallmark of a great franchise, right? It's like, hey, how come this multi-billion-dollar company called McDonald's can be run by 15-year-olds who can't even make it to class on time, yet somehow they're able to run this multi-billion-dollar company? It's absolutely phenomenal. And that is thanks to systems. And you're right, the first formal business I had was a franchise, and I completely undervalued just how crucial systems and procedures were. These guys had systems for everything from how to find leads for my painting company to how to manage your painters to how to run payroll. Like it was quite the operation, but I was just too inexperienced and naive to understand the gold that was kind of in my hands. Now, there's a few things about the financing model that maybe could have been different, like where I didn't pay as big a royalty, but all in all, what a great experience to see the power of systems. So I was overwhelmed that summer. I only did it for one summer to have the student painting company. I then decided to enter and start some other businesses, and that's what led to me winning the award in 2009. But it was shortly after that I had like a crisis. I had 4 houses, over $1 million worth of property that I controlled, and the economy went down in 2008, as everybody knows. Big losses in real estate. And around that time, I also had a very questionable mentor. I came to understand too late, was a part of a near Ponzi scheme where $12 million had gone missing. And there's a few other items that had happened around that time that were very stressful. And that combined with perpetual 70 and 80-hour work weeks led to me, those are major contributors to me developing an illness called erythema nodosum. When you get erythema nodosum, literally your ankles and legs become so swollen and so painful that you can't even walk. So there I was at 28 years old. I just won this award as some kind of a superstar, entrepreneur, and I couldn't even walk. And at 28 years old, I nearly had to get my mom to give me like a sponge bath because I couldn't even stand in a shower. So it was very humbling, and it was in that time of 3 months, I had to move back in with my parents for full-time care, that I made a couple really important decisions. Number one was never again in my life would I ever take my mobility for granted again. just the simple act of walking to the counter to get a glass of juice is a gift every single day that everybody should cherish, I think. And yet we don't, because we just take it for granted. You do not understand how quickly everything can go away. For me to have a whole bunch of money get lost quickly when the market corrected, which in retrospect, I made some investing errors, and that's on me. To have money go away that quickly, to have the ability to walk and my health go away that quickly, and even with relationships, in other phases of my life, I've had relationships disappear quickly. And I know I'm not the only one. Everybody listening to this podcast has their own version in some way, shape, or form of this story. So, and because I didn't have systems and procedures, and because I didn't have a strong foundation of making money in my business, I nearly went bankrupt, both personally and within my corporation. And that was the first promise I made myself, was that I would never take my mobility for granted again. I'm proud to say many years later here that I've now completed over 500 CrossFit workouts. And recently I lifted 365 pounds, which I'm very proud of. So that was great.
Nice.
Now, the other promise was I would never again be a burnout entrepreneur. And I started my marketing company right after I recovered from my illness. And I started, very humbly charging $100 a month to manage a Google AdWords account, and then $500 to set up a website for somebody. It was barely above volunteer type work. But before we knew it, we actually had our biggest client does $100 million in sales, and we're overseeing online advertising and some web work and the sales page and email sequences and all this. Like, it's quite a machine. And that was great, except I then found myself back in the realm of 70 to 80-hour weeks, and I had to catch myself that I was almost a burnout entrepreneur again. And that's when I spent 3.5 full months doing everything I could to learn about systems. And through that 3.5 month period, I ended up setting up a ton of systems, hiring some more people to work under me, using the procedures and systems that I created for them. And wouldn't you know it, my revenue went up by 50%, and my workload went down by 20%, all in just 3.5 months. So it was a spectacular turnaround. And some of my entrepreneur friends said, "Oh my goodness, like that, what kind of magic trick was that? How did you do that?" And so I started helping them do the same. And then I got asked to tell my story to people like the Perry Marshall Group, and I've now been featured on the Work the System website. I've been featured on Mixergy and a few other prominent entrepreneur places, and just more and more people have asked me for it. So I went ahead and I created a website called ProfitFactory.com, and there's a ton of great articles on there, and even a free cheat sheet for those that want a quick start guide on how to set up systems in their own business. That's my story.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, there's so much to take from that. And first of all, it's a good thing that your health is back. That's glad to hear that. And I'm sure to a certain extent, the failings that you had with your health probably put you in good perspective in terms of some of the failings you had in business, and probably made it a little bit easier to turn those things around. Did you find that to be the case?
You know what? As entrepreneurs, we get we get into this hypnosis of just go, 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 go. And I would say I'm a spiritual but not religious person. And there was seriously divine intervention. In my life, I needed a force greater than my iron will to descend down upon me and grab me and say, "Look, pal, you're in some bad deals with some bad people. This is not your destiny. This is not the right path. You need to seriously reevaluate. And because you're such a stubborn little ass and you won't stop on your own, we're going to take away your ability to move, to type, to everything. So you're forced into meditation and to stare at a ceiling and just think about your life for 3 months here." Seriously, I believe that to be true.
Well, it's crazy because I looked on your website too, and the pictures that you have up there of your leg. I mean, it almost looks like you got stung by something, or it's just so blown up. It's just fat. That's amazing. I just cannot believe that. That's well, you talk about your body telling you something, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, well, 100%.
Well, I think that's fascinating. I think it's incredible that you've made this turnaround. And I'm curious. Let's talk about systems, because we don't have too much time. And I know for the folks in the audience, I think it's going to be of huge value, because so many people, when they buy a franchise, when they run a franchise, when they start any business for that matter, even if you're buying a proven brand and system, I mean, they're not systematized to the point that they need to be, unless you're dealing with the McDonald's and a few other exceptions. And so the challenge is to set yourself up so that you can then implement those additional systems. Walk through, if you would, the systems that you came up with that other people are now seeking guidance from you on.
I think that in the marketing part of my life, we often talk about the big, sexy topics like, hey, I wrote this one headline and it doubled the number of people who bought this one product, and that raked in an extra $50,000. And it's like, wow, crazy, awesome. Like, what's the next big thing, and it's all about big, flashy, incredible stories like that. And it's like, what is the one-shot kill, like, so whereas I think with systems and procedures, I hate to say it, but I think it's just the opposite. It's like a whole bunch of boring but true type facts. It's like, if it's a brick and mortar business, it's like, how do we open the gym in the morning? 1, turn on the lights. 2, turn on the music to the station. 3, like, does it get any more dry and boring than that? And it's like, fortunately or unfortunately, it's just that simple. And so for me, the very first procedure that I wrote was, and you'll like this, is how to upload a podcast episode.
Nice.
Like no kidding. It was like, step 1, Tim, record the, the episode. 2, it's like email it to Sarah. 3, Sarah is going to log on to Libsyn.com. In 4, she's going to upload the audio file from Dropbox. And, 5, she's going to put in the keywords that Tim gave her. And it's just like, it was honestly, Josh, is that boring. Like, that everyday common sense, simple type stuff. But it all adds up so quickly, because entrepreneurs typically die, a slow death by 1,000 paper cuts. Like, every time we say, oh, I'll just do that, or, oh, it's faster if I just do it myself, or, oh, I'll just spin by on my way home and pick that up from the store. Those are all the paper cuts. And that is the death by 1,000 paper cuts that takes every entrepreneur to their knees.
Or burnout by 1,000 paper cuts too, right? I mean, yeah.
Absolutely. So it's like, recording the podcast episode is whatever, 20 to 30 minutes to do and to prepare. And it's only another, say, 15 minutes to actually upload it. But you start giving 15 minutes to your assistant here and, 10 minutes to respond to customers there, and 15 minutes to log into your credit card processing thing and to process someone's payment here, and another 10 minutes to deal with updating a client website there. Like, I mean, it is incredible. And like, what is a business? It's nothing more than a whole bunch of little actions all combined to create a solution for a customer, and then you get paid for it, and that's a business. And it's like, so it's just about reverse engineering and like kind of deconstructing the whole business into smaller chunks, and those smaller chunks into its tasks, and those tasks into the steps. And it's like, you as the entrepreneur, if we were to take all the tasks you do over the course of a day, a week, a month, a quarter, a year, a decade, a career, and we were to take all of those tasks and we were to give each of them $1 per hour value. So some tasks in your business, you could hire somebody for $10 an hour. Some are $15 an hour, some are $20 an hour, some maybe slightly higher end stuff, like maybe AdWords or, certain copywriting is $50 an hour. Maybe your lawyer is $250 an hour. But if we assign a price to absolutely every task, and from there we stack them on the left from least expensive all the way to the right to being the most expensive, you would see what's called an 80-20 curve. I'm sure you're familiar with the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, and it's like the few less than 20% of inputs make the big 80%, if not more, of outputs. It's everywhere in nature, everywhere in society, and politics and society and finance, and it's everywhere. And you would see the curve. And so then the game from there is just as simple as this, Josh, it's just a matter of finding what is a lower dollar per hour task, a $10, $15 an hour, $20, I would say all the way up to $50 an hour type task that happens over and over and over again in your business. Maybe it's opening the store or closing the store. Okay, maybe it's uploading a podcast episode or charging credit cards, running your clients' purchases, and getting that one single task off your plate and using that unit of 15 minutes a day or 1 hour a day or 5 hours a week or whatever it is, and reinvesting that 5 hours a week into one of your top 20% tasks. And that then spins off more cash and more free time for you to then go and systemize the next 5 tasks. And that frees up, and then you reinvest that into the top 20%, and the cycle just goes around until the whole bottom 80% is off your plate, and now you're just in the top 20, and then you can do the same thing all over again, but just on a far higher level.
Now, so are you going through this process with brick and mortar places as well as non-brick and mortar or virtual type businesses or online businesses, or does it matter? Does it go across the board through any kind of business?
Everything I'm telling you right now applies universally to online and offline businesses, businesses with virtual teams or in-house teams, businesses that are e-commerce, or businesses that are brick and mortar. So the principles are the same for everyone. The implementation or application is slightly different in each industry. Like, if you have a warehouse where not everybody's by a computer, that's a different game than if you have a real estate brokerage where everybody's hooked up to computers. Even if they're on the road showing houses, they're on their iPhone or their Android. So where my greatest strength is with virtual businesses. And by that I mean businesses that have virtual staff. And whether that's a brick and mortar business or an e-commerce business, just because my marketing company is a virtual business, there is no head office. My team is in Indiana, Italy, New York City, and like a handful of different places. Because I've done that myself, not only can I teach you the principles and lead you through systemizing your business, I can literally copy and paste procedures out of my business and say, here's, the best project management software to use is Teamwork PM, and here's a procedure on how to orient your staff on how to use the most important functions of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I've used a virtual assistant now for I don't know, a year and a half. It's been fantastic. Although I did have the first virtual assistant I tried to hire, I went through a company and it was sort of a disaster, but as I look back on that, it was my fault. And I think there's a whole course on that, right? I mean, how do you, because it's a challenge, right? And it's a challenge trying to get somebody or replace somebody from who traditionally was in your office to now they're probably, mine is in the US, but a lot of them aren't in the US. And so, one of the things I learned is that you can't rely all the time on your virtual assistant to create the system. You have to create that first. Now, that gets back to the very first problem. It takes us back to the start of the conversation is entrepreneurs hate doing that. It's the non-sexy part. It doesn't get you excited, right? But it's doing those things that really make the difference between the truly successful businesses and the ones that are either just getting by or possibly even worse, failing. So how do you get through to the entrepreneur to actually do that? And quite frankly, a lot of them just aren't good at it, right? I mean, it's hard to break down your whole business. Do you go through and do it with them, or are you showing them how to do it and then they do it themselves?
So, Josh, in the last year, I would say we've probably added around 100 procedures to Tim Francis Marketing and ProfitFactory.com. And I think I've written maybe 5 of them. So if you hate writing procedures because you're the future-thinking entrepreneur that creates things and you like to build big, great new things, not deal with typing out step-by-step procedures, you're like most entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Right? And so I figured out how to overcome this exact challenge. And it's a combination of three things. I call it the holy trinity of systems. Number one is hiring detail-oriented, like hiring the right people, which means detail-oriented, tech-comfortable, English-speaking and writing staff. If you don't have detail-oriented people, they're never going to want to sit down and write procedures or follow them. So that is the first part of the trinity. The second part of the trinity is what I call, in my company, it's S number 002, creating and modifying procedures. This is my $10,000 document. I have invested, and I continue to make tiny little tweaks along the way. This is a procedure for how to create procedures. As silly and circular as that sounds, when you have a procedure on how to make procedures, you can hand that to your team member who is detail-oriented and tech-comfortable, and they will learn how you want to make procedures. What tools do we use? How should it be laid out on the document? What are the different kinds of procedures? How do we name them? How do we label them? Like everything. And the third part of the Holy Trinity is what I call decision-making guidelines. When a staff member or yourself is doing anything, including how do I answer an email, how do I upload a podcast episode, how do I charge a credit card, it is really just a series of two things, decision and then action. How do I handle the situation, and what do I do to take action on it to resolve it and to move this thing forward? And procedures are the key for all of the recurring stuff that happens over and over and over and over and over again. So that's pretty straightforward. It's like the kid who is at the front desk of McDonald's or the counter and processing order after order after order, or the kid, dunking the fries, or the one cooking the patties. Like, it's very recurring, very repetitive, and fairly low level as far as like decision making. We run into a problem though when a few things happen. The first problem area is when there's a curveball situation that's not covered by a procedure, what do? If you don't have decision-making guidelines, your whole machine breaks down. And let's face it, curveballs happen every day. So you have to plan for curveballs and handle those accordingly, and that's what decision-making guidelines do. And the other reason decision-making guidelines are so powerful is because the higher you go up your organizational chart, so when we're not talking about the kid dunking the fries anymore, but we're talking about like the guy who flies to a city to evaluate what street corner in this city should we put the next McDonald's, that is a way higher level task than dunking fries. And decision-making guidelines just become more and more and more important as there's fewer and fewer procedures available to do that kind of thing. Okay, so what is a decision-making guideline? Decision-making guidelines is a single document. It's a collection of approximately, I would say, 20 to 40 different statements, and that can be like, a sentence or maybe 3 or 4 sentences in a little mini paragraph that give the guidelines for how we want decisions to be made within the business. So if you think of Josh as a little mini-me, like if we could take you, like, people talk about like the devil and the angel on the shoulder of people trying to make decisions.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to put a Josh and a Josh on the two shoulders, and we're going to whisper into people's ears to tell them about how they should make decisions. So, for example, a decision-making guideline from my businesses is you are an ambassador of me. I'm a responsible, caring, and courageous gentleman. I expect you to be a great ambassador of me. And so maybe that seems like, oh, well, that's kind of obvious, but think about it. If there's a customer service email that comes in and someone's very angry, are you allowed to just blow up at the customer? No, you're not. Okay? Now, let me give you another example, because I'm sure people are thinking like, oh, well, okay, that's obvious. Okay. Secondly, how we handle mistakes. So in most businesses, the way mistakes get handled is, oh, shit, there's a fire to put out. Okay, we got that fixed. Oh, big deep breath. Oh, no, there's another fire. And then it's fire to fire to fire to fire to fire to fire. That is not how we do things in Tim Francis marketing, okay? We don't welcome mistakes, but when they happen, they're an opportunity to improve, okay? And how we handle mistakes is, 1, put out the fire, 2, find the source problem in our system, like what is the system problem that caused the issue in the first place? 3, we develop a fix or a patch for where the problem or where the system broke down. And then 4, we propose it to the supervisor and then get it distributed to all affected teammates. Another decision-making guideline is we double-check everything before release. So whether you're writing an email to a customer or whether you are writing a procedure or whether you're uploading a podcast episode to iTunes, you're going to double-check everything before release. And by having that single decision-making guideline, we double-check everything before release. Now you don't have to put that on as the last step on every single procedure you write. If you have 200 procedures, you just remove the need for one step in 200 procedures by having that one strong decision-making guideline. Plus, it also governs all of your decision-making for anything else that you do in the business. So is that starting to make sense as to what a decision-making guideline is?
Yeah, no, it's fascinating to me. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about the fact that so many franchise systems could actually use some more of that, because there's just a huge dichotomy between systems that are truly well-run and others that are there's good intent behind them, perhaps, but they need major help with a lot of these areas that you're speaking about, where, you know, they've had a good business and now they're expanding, but they've reached a level where they can't even control the growth. And so now they don't have, you know, a solid decision-making guideline blueprint to look at.
Right.
Have you thought about approaching franchise systems? I think that would be a great idea for something like this.
I'll leave it to you to make the introduction for me. How about that?
Well, there you go, man. It's fascinating. It's fascinating because it's all about, you know, the idea is that systems, I wonder if you agree with this statement. I mean, you don't, I think some people operate under the false pretense that, you know, you create the system and then it's just there forever. No, I mean, these are always changing. These are fluid documents. You know, as you know, business is either growing or it's dying. I mean, it's not remaining stagnant. I mean, sure, you know, from year to year, you may have consistent numbers, but there's aspects of the business that are growing or dying. And I think it's the same thing with your systems. And to a lot of people, I think that serves as a mind block for them to even go through the process. But what you find out is when you put the foundational systems in place, the tweaks that you make along the way are less and less and less, and they're easier to do and easier to implement. And there's a compounding positive impact on your business from doing so.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, I would say that what I described earlier about the whole, like, climbing that 80-20 curve from doing, like, the low-level tasks and then replacing those and building systems to free yourself up, like, I have an exact case study from my own business. I tracked this one block of $4,000. Okay, maybe for some people that's a lot of money, maybe for some people it's not very much money, but that $4,000 I invested into getting a proposal coach, okay, to help me write proposals better. And through doing that, he helped me write proposals in such a way that I could actually increase my fees. Now, me doing all of that and doing education on how to write proposals better, I only had the time and the money to do that because I wasn't updating client websites anymore. Right? Because I wasn't, you know, responsible for running my clients' credit cards anymore. Right? And that $4,000 and that education that I got allowed me to charge an additional $40,000 to my clients. Not $40,000 total dollars, but an additional $40,000 for work that previously I would have done at a lower price. Of that $40,000, I took $10,000 of that, and I paid $7,500 US plus airfare from Canada and accommodations in Chicago to go to a Perry Marshall event. That, like, $7,500 US for a weekend event is a fairly healthy ticket price. Like, you're not going to get many tire kickers or entrepreneurs in a room when it's $7,500 US for 3 days.
Absolutely, yeah. And
at that event, the guest speaker was a gentleman by the name of Richard Koch. His net worth is $274 million US. He's written the book, The 80-20 Principle, The 80-20 Manager, The 80-20 Individual. Really smart guy, really inspiring guy. And in addition to how great it was to hear him speak, look at who I got to network with in the crowd, right? 120 high-level people that all have the time, the success, the money to spend that kind of money for a weekend. And some of that networking has now led to me selling an additional $30,000 and counting in a few different ways, in products I've sold, in consulting I've sold, and that in a handful of different areas. And like that's still playing out to see all the relationships and how the web grows. So 4,000 turned into 10,000, turned into $30,000 and counting, right?
Oh, that's great.
Right, and that is an exact example of the 80-20 curve, of climbing the 80-20 curve, because instead of updating client websites and doing a whole bunch of running around inside my business doing $10, $15 an hour, $20 an hour type work, now I have the time and the money to fly to Chicago. And you know what, Josh, the best part, maybe not the best part, but one of the great parts of that trip is it was a 3-day conference. But I booked a trip for 8 days so that I could just relax and enjoy the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. I met my assistant for the first time ever. She drove up from Indiana and met me in Chicago. I bought her and her husband their hotel rooms for the weekend. I took them out to dinner. I took them to a Chicago Blackhawks hockey game. And I was able to just relax, for God's sakes, get some space and to just think about business, think about life, to relax, to recharge. And none of that would be possible, not the $7,500 course, nor the relaxation, nor the networking, nor the meeting of my assistant and building our relationship even further. None of that would have been possible if I was sitting back in Edmonton updating websites.
No, I mean, there's a lot of lessons, I think, to take from that. I mean, obviously, investing in yourself, there's no better investment to make, going to conferences and being strategic about how you do it. But oftentimes, getting out of the comfort zone of where you live, work, and play can really be valuable to.
Oh, yeah.
I come up with great ideas when I go on walks, right? When I get out of my office and I just get out of the stuff going through my head. So I'm in a different sort of environment, or when you travel or whatever, and you can finally give yourself almost permission to be free. I mean, that's when awesome things happen. And I hear that over and over and over again. And so,
yep.
I think that's really, really cool. I really enjoy talking with you, Tim. And I think you've got a lot to share. I think you've got a fascinating businesses and business model, and certainly the systemization. I mean, obviously we love that here at Franchise Euphoria. And even though franchises are supposed to have great systems, trust me, many of them are lacking tremendously. So I think there's a huge opportunity there for you to take a lot of what you've developed and really potentially have an impact, even more so in the franchise market. But where can people get a hold of you? Where can people find out more about your products, services, and just anything else you want to add before we go?
Well, so 2 things. Number 1 is anybody who wants a free cheat sheet with a bunch of copy and paste stuff that's super fast, it's big time shortcut type stuff, go to profitfactory.com, download my crash course and free cheat sheet. It's free. As far as finding great virtual assistants, if that's what a person wants, I tell you exactly where to go. I literally give you a copy and paste, like job posting. You can copy it to the PDF and paste onto job posting websites, and that will help you find the right kind of VA that's detail-oriented, tech-savvy, or tech-comfortable at least, and English-speaking. So there's a ton of just like plug-and-play stuff right out of that free cheat sheet and crash course. I highly recommend that. The second thing is I think that whoever's listening to this should round up a bunch of their Franchise Euphoria fans and bombard Josh with emails asking him for a live event. And I think if that live event happened and Josh and I worked it out, I would love to come speak at it. So I'll leave that to the listeners. We'll let demand drive your decision making. And who knows what might happen in the coming months. Maybe we'll cross paths in person.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Well, listen, thank you again so much. I know we're definitely going to stay in touch, and I really appreciate you taking the time today, and really appreciate your energy, your thoughts, and charisma and everything that you bring to the table. So thanks again, Tim.
entrepreneurs are the heart of what makes this country and this world spin. My heart goes out to everybody, and if I can help somebody get just a little further down their path, I feel like I've met my mission. Thank you for that opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.